Welcome everyone to another edition of Drunk Agile. With us as always, the star of the show, Nisha, jumping out of her skin to be here.
Hey, her eyes are open, isn't that enough?
That's actually, yeah. Longtime watchers of the show will understand what a big deal that is. With Nisha too is her minion.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
No.
We usually go with Butler, but yeah.
Sure.
Prateek Singh.
Prateek, and my name is Daniel Vacanti. Thanks for joining us, Prateek. What are you drinking tonight?
I think we've featured this once before. It's the Bardstown bourbon, and it's their Pfeiffer Private Reserve, which is Cabernet finish. Pretty good, 50% cask strength.
Cool. For weeks, I've been threatening to get over to Auchentoshan, to the distillery at Auchentoshan, and I finally have. I've got my cask straight out of the cask. Went and got this straight out of the cask, as I do. This is a bourbon finish. I would think it's just under 12 years old, 58%. It's pretty good, but it kind of shows its age. I mean, it is a bit young. You can kind of tell that it's a bit young, and probably could have used another year or two more in there, but still quite good. It's yeah, we can talk about the story of Auchentoshan some other time. So, but cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Prateek, what are we talking about tonight?
Yeah, so we got a request. I believe it was through Twitter.
I think it was actually maybe a comment. I think it was a comment.
It was a comment on YouTube, and which this is going to prove that we actually read the comments. So the request was to talk about leading versus lagging indicators. And we're going to go into a little bit of what are they and how to use them. Like the question literally was, hey, can you do a Drunk Agile episode on leading versus lagging indicators? So yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So not only what they are, but I mean, being the skeptic curmudgeons that we are, I guess maybe I should, I don't want to speak for you, but for myself, to me, this kind of TLDR. Leading versus lagging indicators is kind of one of those red herrings. It's one of the things that's talked about a lot, especially in the Kanban community. I mean, in other communities too, but especially in the Kanban community. In my humble opinion, the conversation really doesn't provide much value. It's like, who really cares, about any of this? What we really care about, I think, is just when we need to take action in order to improve. But we'll get into all of that. I don't want to jump the gun just quite yet. So now that I've kind of kicked us off, what do you want to maybe take us back?
Let's start with the definition of the two, and then we'll get into usefulness and is the distinction even important? So leading indicators, essentially things that
are indicators that lead. I thought that's where you were going to go with your yogi berries. I'm sorry. No, sorry. Go ahead.
Let's start with lagging indicators. It's better place then. They're not indicators that lag. Well, they are, but so lagging indicators are things where something has happened, and this indicator tells us whether that event was good or bad, or how that event went, like what happened there. Something that indicates towards what happened in the past. So it lags the event, this indicator.
Yep, by definition, it seems kind of obvious, but by definition, the thing has to have finished, or whatever the event has to have happened before we get some indication of what actually happened.
Right.
In the flow world, classic example of that would be cycle time, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't know until something finishes, you don't know what an item's cycle time is. So it is by definition a lagging indicator, because cycle time is always kind of looking backward at what has happened.
Yeah. Similarly, throughput. Same, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Leading indicator, on the other hand, is something that you can look at right now to find out if the event we're talking about is moving to towards a good conclusion, towards a bad conclusion. Like you can glean information about the event before it has actually occurred or while it is occurring. That is your leading indicator. You're getting the information before the event has finished.
Yeah, and I think that's it. That's the key point there is we are actually getting this metric or whatever that we're looking at. Is actually giving us some information to be able to take action before is the key word there, the operative word there, before things go completely off the rails.
Yeah. So again, based on everything we've talked about, one of the leading indicators would be something like the work item age. If that thing is aging, it's telling us, hey, this thing isn't done yet. We don't have the cycle time of this thing yet, but it's getting too old. And I think, Dan, you and I had a little bit of debate on our Monte Carlo results leading or lagging. And my opinion, they're leading. They're kind of telling, hey, this is how things are going to go. You can also look at them as lagging, going, because our throughput has looked like this, our Monte Carlo results are way spread out. So we're finding out way too late that our process is unstable.
Yeah, we should maybe come back and visit that one. That would be something I would invite our viewing public to comment on. What do you think? What do you think? Are the results of a Monte Carlo simulation, is that a leading or is that a lagging, or is that neither in terms of an indicator? And we might be able to come back and do like a whole episode on that debate.
Yeah.
That might be quite interesting. But now I think this is where we get to the crux of the issue, because you just mentioned what I believe, in my humble and not so humble opinion, I guess I should say, what I believe is truly the only leading indicator out there. And a lot of you Kambanistas out there might have your arms up in the air, probably shouting stuff at us right now. If you're Elvis, you're maybe shooting your computer screen right now. But I'm going to come out firmly on the record as saying that WIP, by and large, work in progress, is not a leading indicator. I know a lot of people like to say, and I used to be one of them. I'll put my hand up and say I used to be one of them that said that WIP, work in progress, is a leading indicator of both cycle time and throughput. But having studied Little's Law and understanding that the way that I understand it now, I can confidently say that WIP is not, work in progress is not a leading indicator. Do you want to talk a little bit about that first, Prateek?
For me, I have always thought of it as a leading indicator of cycle time. I've never thought of it as a leading indicator of throughput. And with all the right sizing conversations that we have had with everything else around it, I don't necessarily think it's a leading indicator of cycle time. You can very often, for teams that have consistent throughput, you can very often go and pull up your WIP run chart and your cycle time trend and see similar trends. But that's assuming a few things. That's assuming that you have consistent throughput. That's assuming that you haven't changed sizing. That's assuming that you haven't changed the system in any major way. To me, that's what kind of disqualifies WIP. But if you have the other things, I do think WIP works nicely as a leading indicator of cycle time if you have taken care of having a stable throughput, having not changed the system very much, having not changed sizing very much.
Yep. Yeah. I suppose I suppose it is a question of scale, right? If you're only working on 2 things at a time and all of a sudden you increase work in progress to 200,
yeah, the rest of it doesn't matter too much.
It's a pretty safe bet that your cycle time is going to go off. But again, at that point, you've got way more problems. And hey, is WIP a leading indicator? And I think this is where I think Kanban coaches are way too rigid in this in worrying about teams increasing their work in progress even in the short term, because I think given the variability that's present or variation, however you want to say it, that's present in your process, some small amount of increase in work in progress may or may not have an adverse effect on how that process performs. Maybe you've got way too little work in progress in the process right now. Maybe you're masking your problems by poor pull policies. Maybe, right? There's all kinds of things that enter into that conversation, that just because your work in progress goes up a little bit, there's no way that that's a guarantee that your cycle time is going to go up. And actually, again, if you go read Little, he's very, very clear on this. He's very clear on this. He's like, if you change, and I think we said this I hope we said this in the Little's Law video. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. What Dr. Little says is, all Little's Law is saying is that there is an intrinsic relationship between those three metrics, and a change in one will necessitate a change in one or both of the other ones. But it's impossible to tell what that change will be beforehand. You have to make the change, observe the process, and then any change will occur according to the law, will behave according to what the law states. So that's why fundamentally, that's why WIP is not a leading indicator.
It's a three-body problem, and you have to have one of those fixed in order to figure out what the others will do, which also gets us to Little's Law. Proofs are also lagging, not leading. So just by definition there, your Little's Law itself is lagging and kind of understanding your system, not predicting your system. So,
yep. So this kind of gets, for me, this kind of gets us back, and this may be a very quick episode, this kind of gets us back to what we talked about, what we're talking about early on, is the debate of leading versus lagging indicators is fairly academic, in my opinion, because what we really care about is what's the information that we're getting that is going to allow us to take action. And as we have said, ad infinitum. This was actually just in that video that I don't know if you caught it, the video you had me watch the other night. He said, I'm going to say this thing ad infinitum, which hopefully is not ad nauseum for you.
Yeah.
Right? and so that's probably where we're going with this. But really, the only true leading indicator, but mostly because it's the thing that gives you the most information, it's the thing that tells you when things are going wrong, is work item age. And that's why we just harp on it nonstop about why that's so important.
Now, to take this all the way back to when you almost gave away the punchline, the interesting thing with any indicator, leading or lagging, is what action does it prompt? When you're looking at a cycle time scatter plot and looking at cycle time of past items, hopefully what we're doing is saying, hey, these things took way too long. What was special about them? What can we learn from that? And kind of put in some policies that make sure that doesn't happen again, or happens very infrequently. When you're looking at an work in progress aging chart, hopefully you're doing the same thing. This thing is going out off the rails. What can we learn from it so that we can pull this back and make sure this thing doesn't happen again? At the end of the day, it's that second part, that action part, that is a lot more important than the indicator that brought you to that action. Whether you call it a leading indicator, a red indicator, a blue indicator, doesn't matter. It's a matter of what are we learning from this metric, this indicator, more than whether it's a leading indicator or a lagging indicator.
Yep, and hopefully that's a prelude to several episodes we have coming up, because this is something that you and I have talked about very much recently over the past couple of weeks. Is when is it appropriate for teams to take action? Why, in the face of overwhelming evidence, do they not take action? When they do take action, why are they doing the wrong things? Right, all of that. I'm feeling a whole series on that, on that coming up. And this whole kind of leading versus lagging indicators, I think, is, like I said, it's kind of a prelude to that. We're too focused on, I think, that whole leading versus lagging thing versus, are we actually doing the right things with the information?
I think it's one of those things that what's unfortunate about a lot of these things, and Dan and I do this all the time, is these things make us sound smart. Using these words make us sound smart.
Well,
Now,
me, and I don't know about you, but me.
whatever. But the fact of the matter is, if just sounding smart was enough, would have been great. But how do people actually improve? How do teams actually improve? How do they actually put this stuff in practice is a lot more important than, saying things like leading and lagging indicator and sounding smart.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think we've kind of kicked the arse out of this. Yeah, well, yeah. that is our signal that it is time to go. And even Nisha is in the background saying,
I'm done with this.
Yeah. So yeah, that's like I said, I don't know that there's too much meat to this, and I hopefully not, our audience is not too disappointed by this discussion. But it just seems to me the wrong question to be asking in general, the wrong question to be asking. And there are probably much better conversations that we can be having. So I'll give you the last word if there's anything.
You just did it. But then
Well,
yeah. Okay. I was gonna go Yogi Berra again, but then I didn't. But yeah, again, it doesn't matter whether something's a leading indicator or a lagging indicator. What really matters a lot more is when we're tracking metrics, are we actually taking action based on them? Are we actually learning things from them? That focusing on learning things and taking action is a lot more important than whether it's a leading indicator or lagging indicator.
And there you have it, from Yogi Berra's lips to your ears. That's it for this week's episode. Join us next time, where hopefully, if everything works out, we might have a special guest for next time on Drunk Agile. So until then, enjoy your whiskey. Hopefully you are drinking whiskey with not an E. And we will see you in the next episode. Good night, everybody.